you Hey everybody, we are going to be getting started here soon. Boop. Do, do, do. Do. Do, do, do. Okay, everybody, we're just waiting for some people to get into the room. Please say hello in the chat room. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you have not. Oh, and thank you so much, Maria, for buying a shirt. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. All right, should we get started? Should we get started? Let's get it started in here. I'm just eager to get to this video because honestly, it's super awesome. Super excited. I'm excited to get on with the message of today. Oh, yeah, Mark's like, I've been looking up this Matt Walsh dude. Matt Walsh is insane. Matt Walsh, oh my goodness, honey. Matt Walsh is insane. Anyway, so let's just go to the face. Anyways, hello. Hello, thank you so much for coming tonight. Tonight is Friday Night Chat. My name is Jan Erickson, and I am the host, and I am Hyperion. I love being Hyperion. I love spreading reason and logic and all that stuff. I love being hyper-rational, and I love being a representative of what it means to be a Hyperion. So here I am. Hyperianism is here to stay. Here we are. We're still here. And tonight I want to look at a video piece by Jesse Gender about Matt Walsh. So if you are not familiar with Matt Walsh is a pretty much like a conservative, much like Ben Shapiro, much like Tucker Carlson, much like pretty much any super right-wing representative in mainstream media. So Matt Walsh is a special kind of creature. I don't know. Like, there's something about him. So we're going to take a look at Matt Walsh through the gaze of Jessie Gender. And again, I feel so bad sometimes. Like, I love Jessie Gender. She is so articulate. She is so smart. She is so good at presenting things in a way that helps me understand what's going on in the world. So I just, like, we're going to pause it frequently and insert our Hyperion perspective because I'm not trying to, like, capitalize on Jessie Gender and her content. You should definitely subscribe to Jessie Gender if you want more content, because frankly, she has such an infinite amount of content on her Patreon, her Facebook, YouTube, and all of that stuff. So please subscribe to Jessie Gender. I am a big fan. So I've been dying to watch this particular video. I have not done it myself, so this is one. Like, the previous ones I have, like, sort of looked into, so I was prepared. This one I am not prepared for at all. So, anyways, I would like to first and foremost say hello to everybody who is in the chat tonight. I'm just going to start reading off the list, so if you feel so inclined to wave your hands around and, like, you know, get noticed, please do. Like, this is the time, honeys. So I would love to acknowledge and thank our moderators, Susan Mitchell. We got Mark Vanderpool. I believe I saw Cassie in here. Thank you so much for volunteering your time to make sure that the chat room is safe and constructive and progressive and not teetering away from the subject. So anyways, I see Rebecca, hello. I see Adam Abraxas, good to see you. Mistress Angelica, good to see you. Lisa Grace, I see Tyler Ease. Tyler, always good to see you. MC Heavyset, good to see you. Renaissance Fairy, good to see you. Cassidy, always good to see you. Zero. Oh, thank you so much, Zero, for coming. You know, Zero, I see you're here, like, all the time. I just wanted to say, I really appreciate that. That's amazing. Zero is always a big contender of Mindful Monad. Anyways, Laura LaFleur, always dropping jokes, being jolly, being, like, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. You always make my day. Hope, good to see you. I really appreciate you coming. So I really want to dive into this video. It's like an hour long, and when I pause it frequently to insert, you know, some sort of commentary into it, it's gonna stretch out a bit longer. So I really, like, I'm not trying to rush us, but I am. I am kind of trying to rush us because I just really want to dive into this issue of Matt Walsh, who is this weird mainstream political figure that is trying to define what woman is, but only for his own pure pleasure and only for his own audience. So are we ready? Should we wait? Are we ready? Should we wait? Are we ready? I feel like a chunky tater tot. No. I'm in a chunky tater tot phase right now, and I kind of like it. Like, I love being a chunky tater tot, but at the same time, I'm like, I know what it's like to feel lean, so I'm like, I'm ready for it, baby. I'm ready to get lean. But I do like my chunky tater tot face. I don't know, it's kind of cute. Just kind of like chubby. Lots to squeeze here. Eh. MC Heavyset, good to see you. Glasses cleaning ASMR. I love ASMR. I am actually in the middle of wanting to start an ASMR channel, and I have wanted to start an ASMR channel for quite some time, but something about recently with things being extra dramatic, if you know what I mean. Things being extra dramatic, I kind of want to like have another YouTube channel to create ASMR content that's not necessarily about being annoying or scratchy or anything, but just kind of creating a very quiet and calm and sultry sort of safe environment, even if it's just random. That's really what I want to do. Oh, Cassie says your one ASMR video was really good. Thank you so much for saying that. That really was an experiment, but like I think I want to go to a different YouTube channel and just do random ASMR, just creating an environment as a Hyperion for other Hyperions in which things are just kind of chill and groovy and calm and collected and rational and just poised and just even in the face of chaos. Like, I want to express that part of myself that's like taking things very maturely and just like portraying that out and expressing that and helping others to feel that same sense of emotional maturity as well, and just kind of getting into the situation where they can feel calm and collected. Hey Jewel, good to see you. Good to see you, Jewel. I was just talking to Jewel earlier today about some very brilliant things, so I don't want to give it away, but there are some very brilliant Jewel Marsh things in the future. So anyways, I think I really want to just get into this. Should we do it? Do you want to give me an indication? Like maybe purple hearts? Give me purple hearts if we should get going. Should we get going? Should we get going, my loves? And Susan is purple hearts. Yes. Should we get it going? Hearts, 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 purple hearts. Cute purple hearts and black hearts. Yes, I like that too. Hearts, hearts, hearts. Okay, let's go. Let's do it. Meh. So, first off, before we get started into this, there is a content warning. This is a very sensitive subject, and I just want to say this is kind of an extension of what we talked about Wednesday. But of course it's a Friday night chat and we're more loose, so let's just enjoy our treats, our drinks, and just sit back and just absorb the information. Because sometimes I feel like I absorb very rational content when I'm the most relaxed. Like, I'm just sitting back and I'm like, and then I'm watching something and it's like somebody says something very rational and like life-changing, and it's like, but because I'm so relaxed and it's like, it's like it's easier to assemble and just absorb and digest and just take in. So I want everybody to just take 3 deep breaths. Okay, let's do that. Let's do it right now. I don't care how silly this is. Okay, let's just take 3 deep breaths. Okay. Now, let's just absorb the information. Because Matt Walsh is upsetting enough. And we don't need to be exacerbated any more than we are recently. Okay, let's turn off the music. Thank you, music. Let's thank the music. Thank you, music. Thank you, music, for setting the mood. And let's get started. With this.
Women, what are they? Truly an extremely difficult question that the leftist, liberal, Marxist, woke skull brigade can certainly never seem to answer. Except me. I, as a trans woman, clearly understand what a woman is. Shut up. On June 1st, 2022, the first day of Pride...
I'm sorry, she really just fucking clapped that in there. My goodness. I told us to, like, relax, and she's just like, the woke liberal Marxist agenda!
Pride Month in the United States, right-wing podcast network and Gina Carano's emotional support group, The Daily Wire, released What is a Woman? A documentary where one of its hosts, right-wing provocateur and X-Men's Origins Wolverine cosplayer Matt Walsh, traveled around
right-wing provocateur and Wolverine impersonator. Jessie Gender is so fucking, like, spot on with her, just like, she's just like zing, zing, zing with her little, like, observations.
Ostensibly to answer that simple question, what is a woman?
What is a woman? What is a woman?
What is a woman? What is a woman?
Yeah. Oh, and presumably to make this face that looks like he's trying to use the bathroom in every other shot.
Matt Walsh.
Upon its release, the right-wing web went a-buzzing with praise for this film, saying things like, "It's cheeky,
Funny, creative, fascinating.
Enlightening and entertaining.
Movie, can I just tell you?
Y'all have got to watch this dope documentary called What is a Woman? Mark Walsh really did his thing with this. They're really trying to keep this under wraps, too. He was also on Dr. Phil, killing them, too.
The absurdity of gender ideology was on full display as the activists struggled to give a coherent answer, leaning on vague, nonsensical statements. Walsh's everyman demeanor and composure in questioning is akin to the comical style of Michael Moore or Borat.
They're not.
So Matt Walsh made a documentary about what is a woman, and it came off very more satire and comedic for his own very right-wing audience.
It's remarkably effective in creating the right environment for his subjects to open up, usually to their detriment.
And your film did a good job exposing the incoherence of gender identity.
No, not J.K. Rowling. Oh my goodness. J.K. Rowling is so fucking out of her goddamn mind. She's lost it. She's lost it. And I originally was somebody who was like, hey, I'm a Harry Potter fan. Like, I love Harry Potter. I'm not going to get rid of it, just because J.K. Rowling is a fucking crazy turf. But recently I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck it. Fuck it all. Burn it all down. Shut it all down. Shut it all down. J.K. Rowling is such a fucking ridiculous person. She is such a trans exclusionary feminist, and it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's totally based on her projections and her lack of shadow work. Sorry, did I just go on a rant? I think that was a rant.
Identity theory and some of the harms it's done. Many institutions I used to admire have uncritically embraced this dogma, but I reserve my ire for them, rather than shouting coward at individual women.
I'm J.K. Rowling, and I am digging the world's deepest hole, which I'm actively choosing to live in.
Man must be onto something. I mean, everyone is so crazy for this documentary. I mean, look at the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. 97% with over 2,500 ratings. Hot damn. And we all know that the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes can always be trusted. And look, it got 4 whole fresh reviews from critics, including one from the Gospel Coalition. Thanks, Brett. He also seems to be an X-Men Origins Wolverine enthusiast. Cause we all know only the best of the best get to be Rotten Tomatoes critics. I'm one. Oh, and don't worry, this video, the one that you're watching right now, is gonna count as my review of the movie, and I'll post my tomato meter score soon. I wonder what it'll be. But speaking of my review, I wonder what other left-wing reviewers had to say about the film. Anybody? Anybody?
No one.
Anybody? Anybody?
In the cat house. You know, if you're asking for shit in the cat house, in the cat scratch house, you know there's nothing. There's nothing out there in the world if you're looking for it in the cat house.
And so it was that the lone wanderer ventured forth, intent on discovering the fate of a father.
But while there have been a few articles from the liberal media about the film, most reviewers from the left wing haven't even touched it. It must be because we're all so scared of the answers that Matt X-Men Origins Wolverine stan Walsh might bring to light about the horrors of gender ideology.
Gender ideology.
Truly, this film was a victory for the right wing against those transgender ruin people into loving less men X-Men spin-offs like the woke Logan.
Something's happening to you, Logan. On the inside, you're...
Wait.
I can smell it.
Or, we don't want to waste our time with a bad movie. Not X-Men Origins Wolverine, which at least had a cool credits montage. I'm talking about What is a Woman, which looks like Matt Walsh got his opening credits from a pre-made After Effects stock website. Believe me, it's what I do.
Beam me up, Mr. Spark.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? Hold on. What, did I read that
This film
correctly?
was a victory for the right wing against those transgender ruin people into loving less men X-Men spin-offs like the woke Logan.
Something's happening to you, Logan. On the inside, you're...
What?
I can smell it.
Or, you know, we don't want to waste our time with a bad movie. Not X-Men Origins Wolverine, which at least had a cool credits montage. I'm talking about What is a Woman, which looks like Matt Walsh got his opening credits from a pre-made After Effects stock website. Believe me, it's what I do.
Beam me up, Mr. Spock.
Jesse Gender presents Hegelian dialects and Spock cocks. Spock's cock. Hegelian dialects and Spock's cock. Yes! Oh my god, I just like my whole fandom of Jesse Gender just went up so fucking high right now.
But that's kind of the point, though. What is a Woman is a film that was never intended for anyone outside of Matt Walsh's direct audience to watch, because that would actually be against the movie's goal. After all, as I showed, the collective silence in the face of right-wing enthusiasm for the film could be wielded as an admission of the film's ability to stun us into abject silence.
What? Oh my goodness.
But sadly, if you watch the actual movie, the only thing that shocks me into silence is the sequence of the film that feels more racist than the Star Trek The Next Generation Code of Honor episode. And that's pretty damn racist.
I have never seen the Star Trek Code of Honor episode. I have never seen that. I don't know. I'm taking her word for it because she's a goddamn hardcore Trekkie. God damn. If there's a Trekkie I'm gonna look to, it's Jessie. Thank you, girl.
I want Lieutenant Yard to become my first wife.
Oh, nope. I've seen this episode. Oh my goodness. This is a really, weird episode. No, I take that back. I've seen it. I know.
I challenge your right of supersedence.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you want to watch a lot of shit about controversial, moralistic ideologies and stuff like that, I don't know, start watching Star Trek Next Generation. Do it. If you're somebody who really likes Hyperianism and you even go as far as to identify as Hyperian, watch Star Trek Next Generation. Start it. Do it. Do it today. Do it today. Do it immediately. Do it right now. The whole first episode of Star Trek Next Generation is humanity being put on trial for all of its history by a really omnipotent being, a very eternal being referred to as the Q, who eventually it all reveals to be that the Q are actually afraid of humans because the Q discovers eventually that humans evolve beyond themselves. It's very Hyperion. Watch it.
Woman has challenged supersedence for over 200 years.
The right is mine and I will have it.
The challenge is unequivocally refused.
Then you shall have no treaty, no vaccine, and no Lieutenant Yard.
What is a Woman is not an earnest investigative work that portrays genuine curiosity centered on the film's titular question, but instead a propaganda piece meant to distill all the anti-transgender narratives that have been floating around the past few years into one place in order to spoon-feed them to an audience in order to reinforce the growing anti-transgender sentiment that's being wielded by conservatives in power to stoke culture war narratives in order to distract from needed change and halt progress in the United States, all while building up those conservatives' power and, more importantly, lining and specifically Matt Walsh's in this case's pocketbook while justifying horrifying violence in order to do so. Let's break it down. All the misinformation, the way Matt Walsh frames his arguments, and whatever the hell is going on here.
I like scented candles. And
Yeah.
I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
Matt Walsh may be asking,
What? All right. Matt Walsh talking about how he's watched Sex in the City. Does watching Sex in the City and having scented candles really get you in tune to the feminine side? Because there's something about this that doesn't add up to me. Anyways, I'm going to play this. I need to pee real quick, and I'm going to be sure not to forget to unmute my microphone when I come back so that, if I give any commentary, you can actually hear it. So, meh.
What is a woman? But today, I'm going to ask, what kind of man is Matt Walsh?
You prey upon impressionable children and indoctrinate them into your insane ideological cult, a cult which holds many fanatical views, but none so deranged as the idea that boys are girls and girls are boys.
What is a Matt Walsh?
A Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh?
What is a Matt Walsh?
Oh man. Matt Walsh. I think he's a hustler.
The weatherman
The weatherman.
in Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. Okay.
Wannabe Street.
Wannabe Street. What does he hustle? Like, how does he do his hustle?
He hustles fish.
He hustles fish.
He works in finance. That's what he tells girls so far. 100%.
Imagine he would live in a log cabin, have a beard similar to the one you're wearing, and eats a lot of fish.
Eats a lot of fish. So log cabin, beard, fish. That's like the Matt Walsh brand, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Isn't Matt Walsh that guy that is asking people, like, what is a woman?
He is.
Yeah.
What do you think of him?
I would say he's probably a bit of a douchebag, but, like...
So, before we get to the film proper, let's ask the question. Matt Walsh may be asking, what is a woman? But today, I'm going to ask, what kind of man is
I'm just rewinding it a little bit.
Prey upon impressionable children and indoctrinate them into your insane ideological cult, a cult which holds many fanatical views, but none so deranged as the idea that boys are girls and girls are boys.
What?
What is a Matt Walsh?
A Matt Walsh.
What is a Matt Walsh? Oh my god. Brilliant.
What is a Matt Walsh?
Oh man. Matt Walsh. I think he's a hustler.
The weatherman
The weatherman.
in Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. Okay.
Wannabe Street.
Wannabe Street. What does he hustle? Like, how does he do his hustle?
Wanna be straight.
He hustles fish.
He works in finance. That's what he tells girls so far. 100%.
Imagine he would live in a log cabin, have a beard similar to the one you're wearing, and eats a lot of fish.
Eats a lot of fish. So log cabin, beard, fish. That's like the Matt Walsh brand, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Isn't Matt Walsh that guy that is asking people, like, what is a woman?
He is.
Yeah.
What do you think of him?
I would say he's probably a bit of a douchebag, but, like...
He's a bit of a douchebag.
So, before we get to the film proper, let's ask the question, what is a Matt Walsh? Matt Walsh is the right-wing host of The Matt Walsh Show, because conservatives can't think of a better title than to slap the word show after their name. Which, incidentally, this is now called The Jesse Gender Show. But The Matt Walsh Show is a series for The Daily Wire, a right-wing company run by Gina Carano simp Ben Shapiro.
I called Gina, and we talked. And we decided that Daily Wire's next film will be starring and produced by Gina Carano. We could not be more excited to work with Gina.
Think of Walsh as Shapiro's understudy for some weird fucked up Shakespeare play at your local theater, where if Shapiro is Oberon, Matt Walsh is, let's say Puck. Anyways, Matt Walsh's show is primarily provocateur stuff, going through the day's news and giving
the agony of defeat
takes on them. He'll do things like react to videos pulled from places like the Libs of TikTok channel.
So Liana uses they, them pronouns and demon pronouns. So the first sentence would be, Liana is my partner, they are cute, and I am theirs.
She's going to be a linguistics professor. This is what grammar, teaching language and grammar. That's what it's going to be pretty soon. And there is something very on the nose about this. In fact, in the Gospels, when Jesus encountered demon-possessed people, they would sometimes go by they, them pronouns.
The Washington Post...
No! Matt Walsh just did not. Matt Walsh just did not say that according to the Bible, anybody that was possessed by demons went by they, them pronouns. Oh my goodness, Lord Almighty. How can you simultaneously acknowledge that they, them people exist? Even within the context of Christian nationalism, and then turn around and be like, no, they don't. We don't like them. Get rid of them.
Post recently did a story on how conservatives have used the Twitter channel Libs of TikTok to spread anti-LGBTQ sentiment and further the growing narrative of all LGBTQ people as...
I mean, if I'm possessed and something's inside of my body, I mean, I guess sexy, I guess. Ooh. Sexy music time. I got a demon inside my vagina.
Rumors.
Much of Walsh's work, though, also reinforces right-wing Christian worldviews, especially about the distinction between men and women as categorically different and women's roles as being mainly in the home.
I know that a lot of you think men and women can be friends, but it takes two to tango. And sadly, men, much of the time, have an entirely different dance in mind. As for men who claim that they have many dear friends who are women, some of those guys are gay and the rest are lying. Don't shoot the messenger here. This is just the truth.
Like most of right-wing media, because Matt Walsh is certainly a follower and not a leader, Walsh has spent the last year or so hyper-focusing on transgender issues, because trans folks are currently the hot new trendy thing to hate on that get all the clicks. And he's found a fair bit of success doing so. One need even look at his YouTube channel to see that his top-performing videos are usually about trans people. He's even performed stunts like appearing at a Virginia school board meeting claiming to be a Virginian in a Tennessean's body to yell at them being child groomers for simply having trans-inclusive bathroom policies.
You prey upon impressionable children and indoctrinate them into your insane ideological cult, a cult which holds many fanatical views, but none so deranged as the idea that boys are girls and girls are boys. By imposing this vile nonsense on students to the point even of forcing young girls to share locker rooms with boys, you deprive these kids of safety and privacy and something more fundamental too, which is truth.
He's also published an anti-LGBTQ children's book that fear-mongers about trans people, which the...
I've seen this book, I've read this book, I'm familiar with this book, and it's awful. It's awful.
Wonderful Zoe B recently did a video on that I recommend that you check out, and I did my own video on a few months ago. On top of all this, Walsh spends at least several of his segments a week focusing on making fun of or attacking trans people on his show.
He states that those who spew hostility towards the trans community have blood on their hands because 40% of trans adults report attempting suicide.
Okay, everything you heard at the end there was completely false. Actually, it was all completely false. The claim that trans people are the victim of a hate crime epidemic has simply no evidence to support it. There is a similar lack of evidence to support the claim that healthcare for trans people is being criminalized and that trans people are being denied the right to exist. There's only...
Trans care is being criminalized. They are being denied the right to exist. I am being denied the right to exist because I'm non-binary trans. We went over this last this Wednesday, like, go back a couple of days ago and watch my live stream about non-binary people, because there's something very bizarre about these people who are so obsessed about discussing if I exist or not, and I'm like, I'm here. I'm queer, get used to it. And I'm not here to demolish women. I'm not here to demolish men. I'm not here to do any of that shit. And it makes me sad when binary trans people decide to join forces with cisgender people to take us down, because I know deep down inside that cis people are not rooting for them. They're just using them to take us down. It's just, the infighting is ridiculous. Yeah, Cassie says, trans people are not being hated. They're not being hated on. Now here's my reoccurring show about and why I hate trans people. Exactly.
One group of people in this country who are denied the right to exist, and they're still in the womb.
And we'll touch upon all of these things that I just mentioned a little bit later.
No. Oh, no. You know who's really being denied the right to exist? Fetuses. Fetuses are more important than people who are trans and like non-binary trans in here today. That's not a problem. I don't like these arguments.
In the next video, but eventually though, the Daily Wire has worked to expand into feature films, like casting the Disney-canceled Star Wars actress Gina Carano in Terror on the Prairie. You know, the actress who was fired for repeatedly doubling down on transphobic and anti-Semitic statements on her social media. Definitely just...
The uncanceling begins.
Cancelled by the lib media there. So, the Daily Wire decided, why not marry in unholy, unorthodox matrimony Matt Walsh's growing transphobic provocateurship with their feature film department, resulting in the documentary, What is a Woman?
What is a woman? Can you answer that in the chat? What's a woman?
What is a woman? Can you tell me that? Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea. Please, if one person could tell me what a woman is.
You are not here for women! We ask you to leave!
What is that?
So, before we can get into the deep end talking about this film...
What is a man? What is a man, Matt Walsh? Are you a man? What is a man? These are such weird, arbitrary, like... You see how cis women can't even answer that? Do you see how cis women can't even answer what a woman is? Because it's so fucking nuanced that, like, you're gonna fucking end up spinning around in circles, Matt Walsh.
First, talk about its framing. How the movie establishes itself to its audience versus how in reality it's actually presented. Right off, we know that this is a Daily Wire film, so there's that. It's clearly got some sort of point of view that it's pushing. Yet let's claw our way like Wolverine a little bit deeper into how the movie sets itself up for its audience. If we look at the film's website, where, by the way, it constantly reminds you that you can subscribe to the Daily Wire for only $9 a month annually, which I may point out is $1 more than a Disney Plus subscription, so spending your money wisely here. The film's description says,
"It's the question you're not allowed to ask. The documentary they don't want you to see."
Before we've even started the movie,
I don't care, define it. Define what a woman is. I don't give a shit.
There's this implication hanging over the film of controversy. That people don't want you to see it. Who they are and why you're not allowed to ask the simple question, what is a woman, is left hanging in the implication. A nebulous us versus them framing, enabling the viewer to slot in whoever they want into that blank, non-gendered
they.
And one wonders if they is singular or plural. Ooh, spooky. Much of
Spooky.
Conservative and right-wing media today relies on this non-specific antagonistic framing. New York Times reporter Nicholas Confessor recently did a study of every single one of Tucker Carlson's episodes of his show, and he discussed how this narrative propagates and functions in conservative media.
They want you to do what you're told. They want you to kiss the ring. They're not sentimental. They want power. They want power. They hate you. They want to hurt you. They call you a racist. They call you racist. They want to control what you do. And of course, they want to control your children too.
Dear God, power to that man for watching every one of Tucker Carlson's episodes. Whew! No, I couldn't have done it. Based off of Nicholas and his team's work, the New York Times even put together a handy little multimedia article of how this us versus them system works that I've linked below. I'm not the world's biggest fan of the New York Times for numerous reasons, but this article was fascinating. Good old Tucky C never explicitly states who they are, but it's always clear that they have power over you. That they are the ruling class. Yet this supposed ruling class they that dictates your entire life can be whoever right-wing conservatives need it to be that evening. Walsh's film What is a Woman feeds into this framing in the exact same way, priming its audience that this film is speaking truth to power, is fighting back.
How can this whole thing be happening, Matt?
The interview's over. Let's turn off the cameras.
Excuse me.
Hello, fair. I just wanted to know, what is a woman?
And you're not going to find out.
It has an adversarial bent to its marketing, assuming that its audience already has a presupposed us versus them in their head. And
that's the weird part about this. It's Matt Walsh's application as a representative of right-wing media to ask these questions to the opposition, in the sense that they already have this answer that they don't want the right wing to know, or they're just trying to deceive the right wing. That's what's so bizarre to me. And that's where the term and phrasing of agenda comes in. There's an agenda. There's a trans agenda. There's a gay agenda. There's an agenda, girls. Girdle up your loins because there's an agenda, my lord. Like, no, there's no agenda. The only agenda there is simply created and fabricated by the right wing. It's the attempt to turn us into boogeymen. It's like, oh, look at these trans and queer people. They're taking over us. They're erasing us. They're erasing us. They're erasing us. Like, we're not doing shit. We're just trying to exist. And you're the one that's obsessing over us. Stop it. Stop it. It's silliness. Stop.
them in this case happens to be trans people. But the film itself is a question. What is a woman? With it framing itself as a quest to answer this very question.
Forget trying to figure out women. The real question is, what is a woman?
And to be fair, that is an excellent place for any documentary to start. A curiosity or a willingness to explore a simple conceit, to try to explore an idea. And I want to be clear, documentaries need not be unbiased. In fact, none of them are. All documentaries present a worldview of those making it, even if they don't want to. Documentaries like Grey Garden, for example, which was a documentary known for its cinema verite style that tried to de-emphasize the viewpoint of the filmmaker, still showed remarkable tenderness towards its two subjects, as well as the filmmaker making clear choices of what to show and what not to show in their editing. And those choices are not unbiased or uncritical, but we're typically honest about that fact. Yet despite that, a good documentary comes in with earnest curiosity about the subject matter and a willingness to explore that in a way that encourages questions. And so this what is a woman question, if done in good faith that the film is centered on, is a good one to begin on. And the film frames itself that way in that good faith nature. Matt Walsh states in the early part of the movie that he is searching for the truth about what a woman is.
But what is truth? Is there a truth?
Keep in mind, by the way, those were...
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. No, really. Mark says everyone should learn to distinguish biological sex from gender. And it's that kind of very basic piece of information that I get very frustrated when it's overlooked. And it's ignored and it's pushed aside, even though it's presented very open and plain as day. And that's what I try to explain is like, it doesn't matter what parts I have. Some people are perfectly okay with being a man or a woman. I don't have any problem with that. I don't care. Like, great, do that. Be that. Like, I'm not here to erase that. I don't give a shit. That's not my... I don't have an agenda. I just want to exist. I'm just a non-binary person. I'm a person. I'm a people. That is my whole huge non-binary argument is like, I'm just a person. Like, I just, like, never mind man or woman. I'm just a fucking person. I have a job. I work. I pay bills. I brush my teeth. I brush my teeth and I pay my bills, okay? What else can I do?
The truth. Yet, despite this supposed curiosity, there's a complete lack of that spirit throughout the film. A note of condescension permeates the film's attitude, matching Matt Walsh's podcast persona.
Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No.
Can you tell me what a cat is?
So much of the film has this shitposting vibe, this feeling of, oh, I know better, but I'm gonna assholishly condescendingly joke by ironically pretending to be interested, sort of feel to it.
I like scented candles, and I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
How do I know if I'm a woman?
That's a great question.
To illustrate what I mean, this lack of curiosity on Matt Walsh's part is captured in an early interview between Matt and a Dr. Patrick Raza, a professor of gender studies at the University of Tennessee.
I think I want to, like, explore this doctor's perspective without Matt Walsh. Without Matt Walsh.
Incidentally, though, Patrick is my favorite person that Matt interviews in this film. We'll get to why later, but just know, Jesse stands this professor. In the interview, Matt asked the professor questions about what a woman is, centering mostly on ideas of gender versus sex, and bless Patrick's poor heart, he seemed so damn earnest to give the answer.
Is there a difference?
I saw that in your questions, and I thought, my goodness, this is what we spend an entire semester kind of thinking through.
God, I love this guy. He is so sweet. But when Patrick does begin to start answering, instead of letting his answer be placed into the film, Matt crossfades over it with over-the-top music.
What I think is often misleading about that characterization is allowed to be sort of messy and complicated. But in that framing, when you split them up into these wholly discrete constructs, studies scholars, and really more specifically people who study gender and sex, we're not talking about sexuality right now.
By editing the scene in this way, Matt's implication is that Patrick's answer is too long, tedious, and complicated. The answer to his question, what is a woman?
That's so dumb. Look. The information is out there. The information about non-binary people and how non-binary is possible is out there. It's already out there. What I see is a bunch of people fighting against that simply because they just don't understand. They don't know, they don't get it, it sails over their head, and therefore it makes them angry, and they're like, we gotta get rid of it, because I don't understand it. It makes me angry, because I don't know. People lose their minds over non-binary people. Even binary trans people, A to B, B to A, trans people, lose their fucking shit over non-binary trans people. And I think it's like this weird factor of like weirdness where it's like, oh, this non-binary trans person is weird. It's like, come on. Come on now. There's weird women. There's weird women. There are weird men. There are weird trans people. There are weird non-binary people. There is always somebody within a certain group or descriptor that is weird. And it doesn't make any sense to associate all the people into that one person. Just because some lady, some woman is super weird and just like super pro woman, but kind of representing women in a way where like not others agree with. That's weird, right? Everybody's weird. Everybody's a weird fuck.
Woman, or at least an answer to the question, is right in front of him and being given to him by a person that Matt chose to interview. But Matt shows less curiosity than a studio executive wishing to continue the X-Men Origins franchise. Why is that the running joke that I'm going with this video? As this scene shows, Matt frames the movie as a search for the truth, but it's not actually a search because for him, the truth is presupposed. In the film's introduction, we see Matt spending time at his children's birthday party. Here, his children, a boy and a girl, are wearing distinct pinks and blues matching with their gender. His daughter, when gifted a fishing pole, looks questioningly at it, as if she's too confused by what a fishing pole possibly could be with her girlish little brain. And as all this is happening, Matt waxes philosophically about the innate differences between men and women.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? Because if you wrap a fishing pole in pink paper and deliver it to your daughter in your pink dress, and she looks at it confusingly, that is evidence that there's no non-binary people or anything else? Like, that's it? How uncreative. There is something serious about conservative people where they are just so uncreative. Even when they're trying so hard to be creative and just kind of like theater kid, like, it just, like, they don't do it very well. They don't. They're not very creative. And the same way where they're like, oh, liberals and, like, left-wing people they're not funny. It's like, well, you're not creative. At all. At all. At all.
I've heard people say that there are no differences between male and female. Those people are idiots.
Much of these musings are rooted in this essentialist view that men and women are distinctly different and separate categories.
I would love an Irish coffee right now.
From each other.
Give my son a BB gun, and that's just about all the emotional support he needs. My daughter, on the other hand...
Not only that, but as Matt puts it, women are mysterious, mystical, and magical beings that defy understanding.
Making sense of females is a whole other matter.
Magical.
Magical.
I'm so mysterious because I have boobs. Ooh. Vaginas mean I have glitter hands. Even Stephen Hawking couldn't figure out women, according to Matt Walsh.
Even astrophysicist Stephen Hawking, who could come up with a theory on black holes, was completely dumbfounded by women.
Women. They are a complete mystery.
Matt Walsh must not have seen the theory of everything. Only X-Men for this man. All this reflects right-wing and Orthodox Catholic views of gender, glorifying womanhood while simultaneously reinforcing traditionalist notions of womanhood into stereotypes, and generally subordinate to manhood. And trust me, Matt Walsh wants you to know he's a Catholic.
A good portion of we Christians are not really Christian in any meaningful sense whatsoever.
Like, I give a fuck that Matt Walsh is Christian. I'm sorry. Like, I give a fuck that Matt Walsh is Christian. I'm gonna say it right here and plain as day. I don't give a crap if you're Christian. I don't. Because there are so many, like, ranges of being Christian that it's just so convoluted It doesn't make sense to go ahead and be Christian. Honestly, I don't care. It's my opinion. It's my opinion. My personal opinion says that, like, if you're just gonna openly admit, like, I'm a Christian, but if you say I'm a Christian, but you're not Christian, you're a piece of shit. I'm sorry. I have to go off on that tangent. It drives me nuts. When people press the lines, they're like, well, I'm Christian, but I do this and I do that and I accept this and I accept that. It's like, don't even fuck around with me anymore. Don't even fuck around with me anymore. Don't. You're Christian, therefore you're Christian. There is no but. It makes no sense to split hairs amongst these religions in order to do what? Separate yourself from what? Separate yourself from what? You're ultimately going to be associated with the core of Christianity, which is inherently oppressive. The end. The end.
He often points to the story of Adam and Eve as a reasoning for why men and women are distinctly separate from each other, with Eve being mysterious and tempestuous and enjoying a long talk with Mr. Snaky, causing her to commit the original sin. All of this is nothing new, but it does frame womanhood as inherently sinful, and less than the righteous manhood. And don't worry, we'll come back to Matt's Christian beliefs later on in the next video. But we see this push and pull between the differences of girls and boys in how Matt views his made-for-documentary family. His daughter can't like fishing, she's a girl. Not to mention how he also reinforces toxic masculine traits in boys as not needing emotional support and understanding.
Give my son a BB gun, and that's just about all the emotional support he needs.
And this idea that boys are
the only emotional support that boys need is a BB gun. No wonder boys are so pent up. No wonder boys are so fucking angry. No wonder boys are like, fuck it. My goodness. The only emotional support my son needs is a BB gun. I mean, like, who needs an emotional support BB gun? What the fuck?
Aren't allowed to talk about their emotions and what it leads to is something I spoke about in great length in my video about James Gunn that I'm incredibly proud of and highly recommend you check out. Walsh, who sits at his kid's birthday party with all the joy of Logan from X-Men, immediately follows this scene up with a terrible motion graphics introduction to his film, then a section where he heads out into nature. Because, as he said, nature always tells the truth.
I like to come out here to think. Nature seems to always tell the truth.
This is how the film starts, leading with this implication.
No, nature does not always tell the truth. That's a very materialistic approach. To say that nature always tells the truth, in a way, the truth is reflected in nature, but nature itself does not tell the truth. It doesn't. That's a very materialistic approach. That's a very, like, I'm just going to observe what I see with my senses and base my concept and my view of reality upon that. And it's wrong. It's wrong. It's not objective at all. To be objective would to be, I know what nature is saying. However, nature is simply based on my senses, so I need to look beyond that. That's more objective.
Of the differences between man and woman, and that nature, which Walsh relates to a God-given truth, is what tells all for him. All this is a
Oh, by the way, if you have not liked the video or liked the live stream, please like the live stream and please share.
Common theme in many transphobic narratives, at least for the right wing. that men and women are separate and distinct things from each other, and that trans people are somehow ignoring this reality, or ignoring nature, that we don't understand our own biology that was, again, subtly implied to be given to us by God and is therefore immovable and unchangeable. And that ultimately this leads to the fact that leftists and liberals just can't understand that a woman is someone who was born with a vagina, don't you know?
I've heard people say that there are no differences between male and female. Those people are idiots.
We're not even 5 minutes in the movie, and Matt Walsh has implied exactly what he believes the answer to what is a woman to be. So none of the interviews throughout the film are earnestly trying to answer the question, because the question is assumed to be answered within the first few moments of the film. All this leads to a sense that we, as the audience, really know the answer because the audience is assumed to already agree with Matt before they even started playing the film.
Am I the only one feeling this way?
Matt Walsh doesn't perfectly state his answer, but he keeps on implying it over and over again. For example, he says we had a perfectly acceptable definition of woman, quote, up until 15 minutes ago.
For all of human existence, women were understood to be a certain thing. So what changed?
Women are understood to be the same thing. Matt Walsh does not, throughout the entirety of this documentary, define himself what he thinks a woman is. There is no mission statement behind the documentary, and that should be a red flag.
No one can seem to answer the question now.
First and foremost, in this clip, Matt has already subtly taken as given a few things that telegraph his biases in a way which aligns with his audience's preconceptions about trans people and questions around what gender means. Namely, that apparently we all understood what a woman was until the transes suddenly appeared. Like we're Pokemon in the grass, apparently. It plays into rhetoric around trans people that were just some recent fad, something new that has been pushed on people by the mysterious but powerful ruling class that always hovers in the background of Matt Walsh and many right-wing's rhetoric.
And now our culture is telling us that the differences between girls and boys don't matter.
We'll be coming back to break down this presumption that trans people are a new Western phenomenon in my next video on this film, when we break down some of Matt Walsh's specific arguments that he makes about the film. What's more important, though, for our discussion right now, though, is that right off the bat, we see Matt Walsh not framing the discussion in an earnest and honest way, because there is debate and discussion around whether trans people are a new phenomenon and whether we always understood or had the same idea of gender throughout time immemorial. But Matt is taking it as a given, and thereby subtly reinforcing the idea that gender is something essential and common sense that everyone are.
And this is the point where, like, I get really pissed off when, like, a lot of TERFs reference, what trans exclusionary radical feminists will do is they will often reference Dave Chappelle and his recent sayings, and it's something along the lines of, like, every person this day and age has passed through the vagina of a woman. And it's so false. It's so false. Just, like, if there's a trans man who has a vagina and, like, decides to, like, hey, I just want to, like, have a kid and close it off. Like, suddenly it's like, no, that kid did not pass through somebody that's a woman. They passed through somebody that's a man. So, yes, absolutely, men can be pregnant and have children. It's such a fucking, like, asinine fucking goddamn dumb old man yells at cloud comment.
Already understood, yet without offering a concrete answer, thereby playing into his audience's pre-existing beliefs in essentialist ideas of gender being innate, while also allowing themselves to put their own ideas of gender onto Walsh without actually having him say anything concretely. But again implies that they meaning transes, have confused what it means to be a woman. But if this were a documentary being asked in good faith, then if we, trans people, can confuse the answer, doesn't mean that the answer is more complicated than Matt wishes it to be. Walsh isn't interested in trying to make an argument for anybody to be convinced by him, but to actually just talk to an audience that's already assumed to agree with him. Matt wants the audience to this film to feel affirmed in their idea that they already have going in, that the answer to what is a woman is a simple and common sense concept. He even interviews in the film a person who is meant to represent his audience early on when he interviews the proprietor of a geek collectible store in Aberdeen, Washington, that went viral last year after that city's transgender city councilwoman confronted the store owner on video after he put up a sign that said, "If you're born with a dick, you are not a chick." I'll give him that, at least it's a good rhyme. Though you could make it better if you're born with a dick, you
It's a good
can still
rhyme.
be a chick. Anyways, here's the clip that went viral.
You're gonna put that up and you're gonna let everybody else see it?
Well, everybody
When
loves
you're
it.
confronted by a trans woman, you're gonna hide it?
Everybody loves it.
No,
They
I don't
take
think
pictures
so.
of it. They post it. 9 out of 10 customers love it.
Yeah, you know what? It's bullshit.
No, what you're spouting is bullshit.
No, it's not.
It
Trans
is-
women are women, sir. That sign is bullshit.
I'll tell you what. Just check it out. It ain't bullshit.
I'm telling you right now, as a trans women are women. Your
Well,
sign
I'm
is
telling you,
bullshit.
as a man, that's bullshit.
It's interesting that the store owner says that, as a man, I'm saying you're a woman at the end here, as it implies that, one, he doesn't actually see the councilwoman as a man, as he implies, even if only subconsciously, and two, that it's a man telling a woman what a woman is, something that Matt Walsh himself is trying to do in this documentary, reflecting that Matt Walsh is using this guy as an example of the audience that he's speaking to. But we'll come back to that whole man telling a woman how a woman feels in the next video.
It's really disturbing to me to see that sort of interaction in like a regular store between two people. It's the wrong kind of conversation. It's the wrong kind of conversation. I think it's really bizarre how trans people genuinely want to exist, simply exist in the world. But the world that we're trying to exist in ultimately is not made for us. So it's like we just sort of stick out as a sore thumb, even though that's not how it should be. That's not how it should be at all. Like, why are we sticking out as a sore thumb? And that's something that intrigues me. I'm still trying to understand what is so threatening about my existence as a non-binary trans person, let alone just a regular trans person, a binary trans person. I'm trying to see the part where I'm threatening to other people, and I have yet to see it, even though I'm constantly placed in the position of the person who is threatening to others.
Video and later on in this one. In the interview, Matt downplays the sign but continually cuts to the councilwoman yelling at the poor old man, a deliberate editing choice that will return to as a common theme for this documentary later on in the next video.
One day I just put the sign up over here, and he came around the corner, and I thought, okay, I recognize him. I says, oh, I recognize you. You're our new city councilman. He says, no, I'm your new city councilwoman. So it was kind of on from there.
You know what? It's bullshit.
No, what you're spouting is bullshit.
No, it's not.
It
Trans
is-
women are women, sir. That sign is bullshit.
I've been doing this 25 years. I've never had a problem with anybody, whether they're gay, transsexual, anything.
But this is a common tactic by many people wishing to vilify trans people, showcasing us as aggressive and angry and vitriolic, yelling.
That's what pisses me off. Oh, trans people are just so angry and they're so expressive and vitriolic, and they're just always like, why, poor me? It's like, why do you think? Why? I just like, again, from a non-binary trans person perspective, I'm like, why am I in a world where it's constantly pressuring me to reaffirm my existence, even though my existence should be very like basic and benign?
At the poor innocent people. It's the same thing we saw with the "It's Ma'am" video that went viral a few years ago, with a trans woman yelling in a GameSpot after she had been repeatedly misgendered.
We're not doing credit. You're gonna give me my fucking money back.
Excuse me, sir. There's a young man in here. You need to watch him.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
With these types of clips, there's no real ever focus on the fact that these trans people are being deliberately harassed and targeted, but just focusing on how mannish and angry they seem in order to frame us as vitriolic, angry, and aggressive. For example, in the GameSpot "It's Ma'am" video, the trans woman in the video certainly comes across as overly angry and aggressive, especially if you don't have context. But it ignores that she's repeatedly asked to just have her name and pronouns respected, a simple courtesy that costs people around her nothing, and yet they continually refuse to do. Of course she's going to be upset when she's repeatedly been denied being seen as a full person and insulted. Yet that context is removed if you just watch the video online, and the woman's more masculine presenting appearance mixed with her anger has been wielded by people in the right wing as showcasing how trans women are actually just angry men, to the point where the phrase "It's Ma'am" has become a right-wing transphobic meme. This is often how many right-wing disingenuous framings work, not just for trans people, but in every sort of discourse around minorities. Make a person or group upset, then blame them for their anger and not being, quote, civil, by taking it out of the context in which that anger was provoked. We see it being used on individual people when used with things like the, quote, angry black woman trope, to shaming of movements like the recent manufactured outrage against pro-choice activists protesting outside of the Supreme Court Justice's home after the recent striking down of the Roe v. Wade decision, with many right-wing media outlets saying that these activists weren't being, quote, civil. I'm sorry, when our rights are under attack, these types of protests are entirely justified in the face of it. Yet this anger baiting is a tactic commonly used by the right wing to frame groups and individuals as angry and unreasonable to these right wing.
I just don't even begin to express how that makes me angry. It's so funny. It's like they want so badly for you to be angry that when you finally get there, they're like, aha, I knew you would be angry. And it's like, no shit, I'm angry. You purposefully made me angry. You purposefully acknowledged where my boundaries are and then decided to deliberately move against that anyways and participate in the narrative where I don't exist and I'm just angry and I'm just out of my mind and crazy and stuff, and it's just like there's no conversation happening where it should be. None. I'm gonna grab a snack. Okay, watch this. I'm gonna grab a snack. I need a snack!
Audiences, and it's a tactic which Matt will use throughout his film, as we'll get to in just a moment. Similarly though, going back to what we were just talking about with the Star Wars store owner, he was quite literally putting up a sign that may, on its face, just be seemingly saying his overly simplistic view on gender, but what it was signaling overtly, more obviously, was quite literally that trans people were not welcome in his store. And specifically to attack the trans city councilwoman to whom he was putting the sign up in response to. Not even about her politics, just quite literally the fact that she's trans. And so of course, she has a right to be upset because he's literally trying to dehumanize her and attack her just for who she is, not anything about what she believes or what she's saying. Like, I'm all here for criticizing your council people, but that's not what the sign was doing. But despite the store owner's clear discriminatory sign that wouldn't have felt out of place next to an Irish need not apply one, Matt asked the man what a woman is, and he gives this answer.
Woman. How do you know that that person's not a woman?
How do I know?
Yeah.
Well, common sense.
The man couldn't articulate an actual answer, but just said common sense. It's quick and easy, but doesn't really define anything, does it? Doesn't really answer the question. The man, with his sign, described what he thinks a woman is, but not what a woman is, and he can't really do so. Yet his ignorance is actually highlighted in a moment that Matt believes that he is doing the opposite.
How do you know? that you're a man?
How do I know that I'm I guess because I got a dick.
Well, I guess Don isn't overthinking it.
Yeah, this answer is the answer that Matt wants to give, because this man's ignorance to the question is highlighted in the moment as Matt believes that it's actually doing the opposite, highlighting his intelligence. Again, this is all left in the implication. He wants his audience to assume into this empty space what their answer would be and assume that Matt agrees with them, instead of actually having Matt state what the answer would be. If Matt articulated anything actually concrete, they might actually disagree, or he might reveal that he's actually, you know, full of shit. This is even more highlighted when Matt does this.
Jar Jar Binks, pansexual, do you think?
What? Jar Jar Binks a pansexual? What the fuck are you going on about, dude? Dude, cis people are so weird. Cis people are so fucked up. Cis people think of the most fucked up shit that has, like, ever happened. Like, I don't understand where cis people are like, trans people are gross, gay people are gross. You're the ones thinking about the fucked up shit that we supposedly do. Shut up!
Transgender?
Why would I even care?
If it's his truth.
Matt asked the man if Jar Jar Binks would be pansexual, which is hilarious because we all know that Jar Jar Binks defies definition, and he will smite you if you think otherwise.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. Now get out of here.
No, Mrs. Stern! The point is, though, that Matt jokes how silly it would be to think of Star Wars aliens as some form of LGBTQ in any sense, which, is kind of ridiculous to think otherwise. When you live in a galaxy far, far away filled with aliens, I kind of believe that sexuality kind of goes out the window. When you're in a universe where someone could fuck Watto, I don't think sexuality is anymore. Hey Annie, I'm an anti-Semitic caricature. Let me tell you about my species' gender norms. As Lando Calrissian himself stated, how can you be anything but pansexual in the Star Wars universe?
Lando is pansexual, as you may have seen. Were you aware of this when you were filming?
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
I didn't know he said that.
How can you not be pansexual in space? There's so many things. There's so many things to have sex with. It's like,
But that's just assuming. If we're actually talking literally, there have actually been many genders and gender non-conforming characters within Star Wars, from Leia defying gender stereotypes in A New Hope, to non-binary aliens, to non-binary human beings in the franchise. Also, like, have you seen Jar Jar's tongue? No one with a tongue like that is 100% straight. I'm just saying, Gungan sex probably gets very kinky. Yet,
I'm sorry, what? Gungan sex? I have never in my life thought of Gungan sex. I'm slightly interested and intrigued. I don't know. The tongue? Come on now.
as we often see in the toxic fandom space, something that I've talked about in numerous videos that you can check out, people don't wish to see their fictional universes being realistic or speak to the world around them, but just cater to their viewpoint on the world. See my Sex and Star Trek series for me breaking down that idea of how science fiction and pop culture often reflects the viewpoints of those getting to create it and the larger cultural consensus, rather than actually depicting what the universe would actually be like if we, you know, lived with aliens that all of us could fuck. So yes, Matt's bored by the professor giving the actual answer to his question, but thinks this discriminatory older man who doesn't understand his favorite franchise he built a store around has the real answer. You know, common sense. Now, if I confronted Matt with all of the stuff that I've been saying so far, he probably would just say that he's just being ironic, that these are just jokes. Right. But I hope we all know at this point that irony has been the shield that numerous people have tried to use in order to incept harmful ideology into our mainstream discourse for the past several years. Innuendo Studios, for example, did a great video years ago about how people saying absolutely horrific, racist, homophobic, transphobic, or other bigoted phrases often hide behind saying, "I'm just joking." It was irony, in order to try to give the veneer that they don't actually believe these things, that it was just joking around, while in reality...
I don't understand why the right-wing people constantly make these edgy jokes in the name of just joking, but then turn around and, like, unironically believe in those jokes, and, like, that's actually reflective of what they think.
What it does is work to normalize these types of ideas and phrases into everyday discourse, and being able to allow them to pretend to get offended when someone calls them out on their, quote, jokes, and make themselves out to be the victim. It's quite literally the same idea as cancel culture rhetoric. Say something absolutely horrific, then when people get offended at it, say it was just jokes and the woke mob is coming for you, and have people come and defend you. All the while normalizing this horrific phrasing in mainstream discourse because you're just trying to use your free speech. And considering all of this, one wonders what it means when Walsh, quote, jokingly and ironically, calls himself a fascist in his own Twitter bio. And on top of that, even if that is the truth, the question is then, even if the...
That's not ironic. That's not ironic, that's unironic. Unironically, he is a fascist.
These are just jokes. What is the humor based on? What does it presuppose you already believe in order to get the laugh? Humor is based upon what an audience already believes going into it and plays off of those expectations. That's how humor kind of works. And so this humor is all built upon the foundation that what a woman is presupposed and common sense. It all plays off of his audience predetermined assumption of what a woman is.
Common sense.
This documentary is not trying to answer his question throughout its 2 hours. It's Matt already knowing and reinforcing a belief he knows his audience already holds.
Yep.
But it's so important to note that this is all left in the implication. He doesn't outright state his answer to his titular question until the film's final moments, something that we'll get to. And that, though, is deeply important. Since it's all just an implication, he can give his audience the veneer that he is actually earnestly asking questions. He's just trying to be an objective documentarian.
But what is truth? Is there a truth?
Yes, there is an objective truth to everything, you dumb motherfuck. There is an objective truth. There is an objective truth. That you shouldn't be focusing on goddamn trans people in the whole fucking broad picture of the Holocaust and what's going on. You dumb motherfuck.
Matt is walking this line because he wants his audience to feel affirmed in the back of the brain that he's on their side and wants them to put in their answer to the question throughout the film, but he also wants to have the plausible deniability of earnest discourse, of good faith discussion. So that if someone, like myself, a lowly trans, comes to this documentary and tries to critique it, his audience could just say, well, he's just asking questions. And by the way, just to give you an example of this, when I stated on Twitter that I was going to be talking about this movie, many people said exactly that.
Balls. He just asked several questions that radical lefties are unable to answer.
He's asking valid questions because people won't answer them. You're trying to paint it as gaslight, but it's not.
No.
LMAO. Just answer the question.
The easiest way to shut him up is to just answer his question. Why is answering his question so hard? You could all negate and invalidate his entire film and promo effort if people would just answer his question. So won't you all? Won't? Or can't? Yes. Pwned the libs.
This is what folks want to believe about the film. That Matt...
You just pound the libs. You just... Why don't you just answer the question?
Walsh is just earnestly asking questions. But ironically, many of these people who argued that he's just asking questions, why don't you just answer the question, what is a woman? You can't, literally had people in their replies, as you see on screen right now, answering that question for them, which they often promptly ignored, just as Matt Walsh had done to our wonderful professor earlier in the film. It showcases the active desire to ignore the answer because they dislike it, because to engage with it would go against their need for a simplistic, quote, common sense answer, yet simultaneously, at the same time, ironically, shaming people for supposedly, quote, not being able to answer that question that we're answering. It's because the only answer that they'll accept is the one they already have in their head, and they aren't willing to engage with an honest dialogue. It's a microcosm of the same rhetorical tactic that Matt Walsh's film is reflecting back at them. The audience for What is a Woman is supposed to hold these two conflicting concepts in their head when entering the movie, a sort of double think, one might say. That Matt knows the truth like they do, but that this documentary is also earnestly curious.
And now our culture is telling us that the differences between girls and boys don't matter. That if you identify as something, then you are that thing.
Did they just straight up show Gonzo as an example of, like, gender? Is it me, or has Gonzo from the very fucking get-go been some weird, estranged creature that for some reason has a sexual obsession with chickens? Is it me, or has Gonzo always been fucking queer as hell? Like, Gonzo has always been queer as fuck, dude. The man, I don't know what the fuck he is. Fucks chickens. He likes chickens. Even when I was like 5 years old, I'm like, this creature likes to fuck chickens.
How do we help our kids make sense of this when they're bombarded with conflicting messages about gender and identity?
But on top of that, we need to talk about how Matt asks his questions. Because this film was controversial before it even came out, and not in the left wants to cancel the truth sort of way. Though, check out this video I did on how the cancel culture narrative works and how it's weaponized to deny accountability and allow for continued harm. But even beyond that, this film was controversial in the way that this movie was unethical from the jump. Early in 2022, trans activist Eli Elric, the founder of the Trans Student Education Project, accused Walsh of seeking interviews under false pretenses. Elric received an email from the Gender Unity Project, which asked to speak to trans people on the topic of gender for a documentary project that they were working on. However, after speaking to the producer McKenna Lynn Walters, Elric became suspicious after some suspicious activity, such as Walters' claim that she was self-funding the documentary, something hard for a supposed recent college graduate to be able to do. Eli did more investigating, which you can follow on her Twitter thread that I linked below, and she discovered that this Gender Unity project was actually indeed linked to Matt Walsh, and that McKenna Lynn Walters was actually Walsh's producer. And after all this controversy came out, it's telling that the Gender Unity project no longer exists online. All this points to the fact that Matt Walsh was trying to trick trans people into appearing in his documentary under false pretenses. This is incredibly unethical. First off, it's trying to trick trans people and others into a project against our wishes that would harm our community. But even
that's fucking sad. Matt Walsh is a piece of shit.
Further, even beyond that, it's unethical just for documentaries in general. Certainly, there can be times where you need to be an investigative journalist, where you need to obfuscate your identity for your own protection as well as to get the story, but that wasn't the case here. There was never any danger or need for Matt to hide his identity, and you should never misrepresent yourself to your interviewee when you're trying to engage in investigative journalism and ask questions of this sort. To do so reveals that your intent is not to learn, discover, or report, but that you have a biased leaning right from the start. No documentary that does this tactic, that hides and shrouds itself in order to get an interview, should be considered valid, and it's entirely fucked up, to be honest with you. Yet even beyond the ethical question of this, more importantly for our discussion now that this documentary has been made, is that this trickery is essential to understanding how Matt Walsh has set up all of his interviews throughout the film. Remember our adorable Professor Patrick's earnest and excited desire to answer the question that Matt Walsh had earlier on? That was because Patrick had the assumption that Matt was coming in trying to ask earnest and honest conversations about gender. But as Patrick got into the discussion, he started to understand that Matt's questions weren't from earnest curiosity, but a presupposed position.
If we're talking about a trans woman has all of the male physical characteristics, so would that not be a male then? Couldn't we plainly say this person is a male?
Well, I guess it's like, why are you asking the question? I think I want to understand sort of why that's so important. So if someone tells you...
Just to sort of understand reality, you know?
No.
Well, I mean, I think when someone tells you who they are, you should believe that.
No, I'm sorry. When you first ask a question about a masculine person, you know, suddenly identifying as a man, and then you turn around and be like, well, I'm just trying to understand reality. You're not trying to understand reality.
Sponsored by Fact.
You're not trying... What the fuck happened? You're not trying to understand reality when you ask those questions. Those are not questions where you're trying to understand reality. If you're trying to understand objective reality, then you go to ontological mathematics and you learn about reality that way. You learn about how we're monads. You learn about like how we're monads at our basis level. But to ask like, oh, is this nuanced thing male or female or masculine or feminine or this, that, and the other, you're starting to dabble in subjective arguments. And it's endless. It's endless. You can just keep going on arguing about subjective bullshit forever. Where is it gonna go? Nowhere. That's where the fucking like stupid fucking arguments are hitting today. There are movements out there who are so focused on this subjective material about what is a man, what is a woman, what is this, what is that. It's just sailing over their heads. They don't know how to unite people. They don't know how to actually unite people together. They don't. They're silly people.
Argument to Patrick of what
I hate infighting so fucking bad. I just want to bitch slap people.
If I identified as a black man? A common right-wing argument against trans people. If it's offensive for someone to identify as a black man, they argue, then why isn't it offensive for someone to identify as a woman when they're really a man? But Patrick rightfully points out that this would be Matt Walsh lying.
Are you black? Are you African American? Are you biracial?
I don't think so.
Yeah, well, you don't look that, and I don't think it doesn't sound like that's a genuine statement of who you are.
Okay, so that's my point. I could make a statement about who I am that's incorrect.
Of course, I think it's well established that human beings can lie, yes.
Matt Walsh doesn't...
And that's where I've been talking about earlier, where it's like, well, what about the people who are batshit crazy and they just say whatever they want to say? There's weird people everywhere. There's weird non-binary people. There's weird women. There's weird men. There's weird people all across the board. Don't fucking start saying that it's just non-binary people and trans people who are weird now, when you know very fucking well that there are weird-ass women, there are weird-ass men that make you uncomfortable in the gym room and everything. Like, stop.
Earnestly identify as a black man, nor would his lived experience be that of a black man. Human beings can lie, as Dr. Patrick points out. But this is what Matt Walsh, not just in the film, but in all of his podcasts, frames trans people as being.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Gender identity is about as accurate as Rotten Tomatoes audience review scores. Matt Walsh's whole argument is that by using the pronouns of a trans person, that we're somehow forcing him and others to make a biological lie.
That question is settled by biological reality. The point of the pronoun is to describe that reality. Just as the point of a verb, like running, unless it's used metaphorically, is to convey reality. If I say that somebody is running when they're really sitting, I've conveyed an untruth, whether because I'm confused or a liar or both. And if I call a man a she, I have also expressed an untruth, whether because I'm confused or a liar or both, or perhaps because I'm afraid of getting yelled at if I tell the truth. So we should add coward alongside the options of confused and liar. And it's important to always emphasize that our first concern is not fairness, it's not sports, it's not private.
Oh, hey, Light Remus, thank you so much for coming. VKG says, like, I always thought Gonzo was not only fucking awesome, but, like, was androgynous like a frog. Gonzo, I think, was, like, some weird alien. I don't know, but I love Gonzo. Susan says, gender is a social construct. How do they keep missing this? This is where I'm very frustrated and where I don't like to have the discussion about how there's a difference between gender and sex, because I feel like this discussion has already happened. if you're not in the know-how or the understanding of how gender and sex are very two different things, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I think you're a little bit lost. Like, just Google it. What's the difference between gender and sex? Google it. It's the number one basis of argument for trans people, and especially non-binary trans people.
It's not even safety. Those are all concerns, and they're important, but our primary motivation is to defend truth for its own sake.
None of that is true. When we refer to a person by their pronouns, we're not recognizing what genitals they have or their chromosomes or biological reality, because we actually don't know that whenever we interact with somebody. What we're doing is we're recognizing their lived experience, their personhood, and how we interact with each other in society. For example, a name, similar to a pronoun, isn't a biological reality either. So when we refer to someone's name, we're not referring to their genitals or chromosomes. There's nothing in a name that refers to someone's biology, and the same with pronouns. They're a social and cultural choice of our language. But this is how Matt Walsh constantly frames trans issues, as lies. That everyone he's speaking to in the film that is trying to be supportive of trans people is either lying or...
See, that's where I feel bad. I feel bad that Matt Walsh took the time to put this video together and had people come to speak about the issue, professionals, and then he totally wasted their time. Matt Walsh wasted these brilliant minds' time. Matt Walsh is a fucking time waster. 100%.
Are too dumb to answer his questions.
What is a woman?
Why do you ask that question?
Fair! Why do you ask that question? What are your intentions? Because it's like, it's not enough to ask, what is a woman? I need to know your intentions behind that question. Nuance is a thing. Nuance is a thing. I'm going to sing it for you all. Nuance is a thing. Nuance is a thing. Even though in the subjective reality of things, nuance is a thing. Nuance is a thing.
I just really like to know.
What do you think the answer to that question is?
Well, I'm asking. That's why I came to a college professor who's this is what you do. You just really don't want to answer the questions, do you?
So not only is
No, he wants to answer the question. No, he wants to answer the question. He just wants to know your intention behind the question. Because if your intention behind the question is something nefarious and dickish and full of shit, then why should they answer your question? I think that's what pisses me off. It pisses me off that Matt Walsh is wasting these brilliant minds' time. Thank you so much, Heretical Response. Heretical Response, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Not earnestly curious, he considers people giving earnest answers to be liars so that he can make his holier-than-thou poopy face. Because Matt has...
Holier-than-thou poopy face. Thank you, Jessie Gender. Jessie Gender is a fucking goddess of just pure feminine delight. Like, she just, like, reigns down as, like, the fucking, like, goddess of reason. Like, you, Matt Walsh, you have a poopy face. Fucking divine.
To his audience that he and they know the truth, and condescends to anyone who is different. And as a result, his interactions in his interviews become a kind of schadenfreude to his audience, laughing at how crazy these libs and trans people are. How silly that we can't seem to answer what a woman is.
Defining womanhood is just a project of someone who identifies as a woman.
Yeah, but what do they identify? You see what I'm saying? What do they identify as? They identify as a woman, but what is that?
I honestly don't know.
It's a simple question.
No, it's not. It's not a simple question. It's a very nuanced question that differs from person to person. Why is it a nuanced question that differs from person to person. Because what is a woman is a social construct, and a social construct is purely subjective and purely placed in the avatar perspective. When you are in the avatar perspective, you are in the perspective of your body. When we think Hyperion, we as Hyperians recognize that we are at our very basic level a monad. We are a container of infiniteness. We are a soul. A soul is something that you can attribute and kind of like interchange with the word monad. We are an eternal monad that doesn't have any kind of like intrinsic identity of man or woman. But when you, as a monad, participate in the holos, you kind of do have to play a character. You have to play a part. You have to play a nuanced part. And that's where it gets really weird. It's like, well, are you just simply deciding to be a woman? Are you simply just deciding to be trans? Are you simply just deciding to be non-binary? No. But in some very peculiar, very intricate way, yes. But that's the point of having an individual identity. That's the point of having an individual perspective in the holos. Because if it wasn't for this individuality, we wouldn't have anything to experience. We as monads would have nothing to experience that's different from outside of ourselves. If we were all the same entity, if we were all the same character, if we were all the same thing, if we were all just bland and just like stepping in line as like soldiers with our boots and our books and just everything like that, it's like we're not really individuals. We're just kind of like one big blob. And to think in a sense of absoluteness, to be an absolute thinker, it's not a matter of sacrificing your identity to become absolute. It's about using your identity to participate in the absolute. If you want to see some really cool like stuff about the absolute that I do, I compare the absolute to the jellyfish, or it's not a jellyfish really, it's like something else, but it's called a man-o-war. It's like a jellyfish creature, and it's a man-o-war, and the man-o-war is very peculiar because it's composited of individual cells, so it's not actually like one creature, it's like all these different creatures that like have a certain different role, they have a certain different function, and then they come together to form this one whole creature that functions in the ocean, that does something. So that's my example of the absolute. But anyways, let's get back to this.
So why is it so hard to answer?
How silly that they can't answer what a woman is, because we know what the real answer is. But there's more to this film than just laughing at the libs, because Matt is using the fact that he has set up his interviewees under false pretenses to make the interviewees look dumb, stupid, or, most importantly, hostile. For example, look at Matt's interview.
Oh, Laura, yeah, you can tell me. Hey, anybody can message me through Discord or, my social media platforms.
With the first gay congressman, Mark Takano. Mark initially sits down with Matt in good faith, but Matt asks a question that subtly reveals his hostility to Mark's position and his belief in the Equality Act, which is a bill that would protect rights for trans people. And as a result, it takes Mark a moment.
Oh, Zero said Egyptians had a third gender called Sekhet. Non-binary people have always existed. Always existed. It's the same concept of people who are left-handed. The only reason there was a rise, a sudden shoot of left-handed people up in human history is because it suddenly became less religiously condemned. That's why. And it's the same reason for non-binary people. Like, we've always been here. The only reason it seems like there's an uprising in non-binary people is because it's becoming more socially acceptable. We've always been around. Nothing has changed. There's just the awareness that has changed.
Moment to realize that this interview is not going to be in good faith at all as he thought it was going to be.
I'm kind of mystified that you're kind of not focusing on it first, that we're going straight to the controversy over bathrooms.
But in the film's edit, Matt leaves Mark's awkward pause and shuffling and stuttering, something that usually would be edited out of any other documentary. This is something that Matt does with people who agree with him. He cuts all the dead air, makes them look smart and articulate, and cuts back and forth to make it sound like their answers were just given right off the top and they're able to like really think it through very quickly.
Dysphoria, as it's now called, with their biological sex. And then quite suddenly, as preteens or as adolescents, they come out and they announce that they are gender fluid, or they start to question their sex. So first, let's define the terms.
So in contrast, by leaving this part of the edit in, it makes Mark look strange and slow. As if he's not as quick on the uptake as all the people that Matt agrees with. Even further though, Matt leaves Mark getting up and leaving the interview after one of his staff realizes what's actually going on and puts an end to the interview, framing Mark and his staff as angry and hostile.
You know what? I think this interview is over.
Yeah.
I think this interview is over.
I just had one last question.
The interview's over.
We want to know what is a woman.
Please turn off the cameras.
Excuse me.
That guy has dignity. That guy has dignity. He has dignity to be like, you know what, Matt Walsh? We're done. I know what you're doing, and I don't give a shit for it. We're done. And it's not that he doesn't have the information for it. It's like Matt Walsh is so fucking stupid that he just can't deal with it anymore. Like, done.
The interview, if you guys could please pack up and return the office exactly.
I just wanted to know.
Okay.
I came all this way to know what. They're fair. I just wanted to know what is a woman.
And you're not going to find out.
This is very similar to what I was talking about earlier with the transgender councilwoman. Most of Matt's interviews with people that he disagrees with, people who are supportive of trans people, go this way in the film, either ending with hostility, or by making people look stupid by leaving in their pauses or cutting around their answers to make them look dumb.
I would say that's
It's all surreptitious editing and deliberate misinformed setup getting people into the interview as a way to make people look dumb, hostile, or angry. All of this is deeply manipulative on Matt's part.
Yep, Matt is manipulative. Matt Walsh is a manipulative. If there's anything I want you all to take away from today, it's how manipulative Matt Walsh is. Matt Walsh is not asking these questions as an innocent person who's just wondering, what's going on? What's a woman? What is a woman? Matt Walsh is not in that position. Matt Walsh is in the position where he already has his own answer in mind. He's just trying to frame and corner and pressure these people into it. And that's why it makes me mad that he's wasting these people's time. He's wasting these people's time. 100%. And it's just like, I want to know what these professionals say. I want to know what these professionals say. And I think maybe from here on out, we might actually do some exploration in what these people actually think and feel as a positive insight to like what is progressive in the world. Who is being progressive? What's progressive in Hyperianism? Because I think a lot of the time I tend to focus on what's not progressive or like what's anti-progressive. So I want to try and hunt down some of these people and focus on what is progressive here that's attributing to Hyperianism.
Okay, so let's pause here because I, future editing Jesse, want to actually show you what I mean when I talk about using an edit to manipulate someone's words. Because, do you remember that guy earlier whose clip I showed who said that Matt Walsh was an asshole? And in fact, actually, let's roll that clip again.
I would say he's probably a bit of a douchebag, but like...
Fair.
But,
Haha, very funny, right? I mean, from that, you would think of all the people that I jokingly interviewed for this video, he would be the one most likely to agree with me on trans issues. But that's because I manipulated the edit. You see, if I actually went further, this is what he really said.
I guess he's just trying to figure out exactly what, I guess, I think really what he's looking for, the definition of the whole liberal movement as a whole, to try to figure out exactly like what is what, because everything is kind of being redefined when it comes to gender roles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think he's really trying to just get a consensus of people that are actually active members of the LGBTQ community. Well, LGBTQ, yeah. I wanted to make sure I said it right.
No, yeah,
But, I think he's like actively trying to find out exactly, well, since you guys are redefining what everything means, well, what do you think it means? You know, I don't think he's like purposely trying to embarrass anybody in the process, but like I think maybe he's just trying to be informative, but like he just doesn't have the fortitude or the tact to figure out how to do it without embarrassing the hell out of somebody.
You see, he actually was someone who believed that Matt Walsh was actually doing his documentary in good faith. He hadn't seen the film, nor did he say that he planned to, yet he actually bought into the entire framing of this documentary that Matt Walsh is trying to push outside of his direct audience, trying to portray it as a film that's just trying to ask earnest questions about trans people. And this guy thought that while Walsh was a bit of an asshole, he was just earnestly asking questions. That the whole film was a real quest to discuss trans people, which, as I'm hopefully showing to you, it is not. Sadly, I do wish that we had kept the camera rolling after I spoke to this guy because we stopped filming because he already knew who Matt Walsh was, so the joke kind of ended there. Yet, after the camera turned off, we actually spoke for 10 more minutes and had an honest dialogue about trans people and gender. He didn't 100% agree with me by the end of the conversation, but he spoke about how he had never encountered a trans person before me, at least one that he knew was trans, and how he wanted to earnestly actually know more. And that's what I feel like most people feel around trans people, that they actually do wish to know more. So when they hear about films like Matt Walsh's, they take him at his word and at face value that he is, like them, actually curious about trans people, which Walsh is actually not. For this guy, I actually explained my history as a trans person, my recent search.
I think it's important to give people where credit is due, but Matt Walsh is not somebody where credit is due. And that's what upsets me about Matt Walsh's tactics, his approach. It's not the approach to get sincere insight. It's the approach to back up his bias.
That I had on my face and what that surgery and many others and things like hormones and stuff like that meant to me, as well as other issues surrounding the trans community, like how surgeries aren't actually required to be trans. And he also told me that his mother was part of the LGBTQ community and that he just wants to support anyone being themselves, even if he doesn't understand all this gender stuff. That's how you have an honest dialogue with someone. But Matt, instead, manipulates by posturing to those outside of his audience that he's really just asking questions while preaching to the choir of his audience's predisposed beliefs instead of engaging in earnest dialogue. And he does so in part through, as I hope this whole section shows, by manipulating the edit of those he talks to. So with that demonstration out of the way, let's get back to me talking, because you know you like sexy Jesse talking. Further, throughout the film, Matt has a recurring segment where he walks around different parts of the United States asking people what a woman is.
What is a woman? Can you tell me that?
Why do cis women not know what a woman is? Why do cis women not know what a woman is? Why is it when that question is asked, they also have no idea what to respond instantaneously with? Isn't that interesting?
Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea.
Now, obviously, Matt is only going to show the ones that suit his framing, but there is one segment in particular that I want to draw attention to. In one bit, he attends the Women's March in 2021, and he starts to interview a group of women. However, when the group of women realize that Matt is anti-transgender, they attempt to leave the situation. But Matt follows them around, harassing them with a megaphone.
How am I harassing? I'm asking a question.
Our bodies, our choice.
Whose body?
Our bodies, our choice. Our bodies, our choice.
What is a woman? Can anyone here at the Women's March tell me what a woman is?
What a piece of boo.
It's at this moment, a presumably cisgender man comes up and intentionally bumps into Matt to get him to stop. And Matt edits this moment to repeat, slowing it down and highlighting the physical interaction as if somehow Matt just took a hit in a slugfest instead of a bump on the back.
Tell me what a woman is and I'll put a mask on.
Oh! Bam, bitch!
The intention with this edit is clear. Matt wants to showcase that trans people and our allies are not only ignorant, but violent. While again, he's just being reasonable and asking questions. You know, with his megaphone. Yet, this editing obfuscates the fact that Matt was the aggressor in this situation, hounding and harassing the group of women. Now, this is not to say I necessarily always condone violence, though I don't blanket condemn it either. I think violence is warranted to protect yourself and others in order to prevent further violence, especially if other options are exhausted or unavailable. Now, this man's assault on Matt was perhaps over the line in this instance. However, I wasn't in this situation, so I don't know how bad Matt got, how long he was following and harassing them for. So maybe pushing someone who is harassing a group of women is warranted in order to get him to stop. But even if we ignore this physical altercation that Matt is using to suit his needs, we're still ignoring that Matt was harassing this women. Still, the framing of Matt as reasonably asking questions flies in the face of his harassment and attempts to escalate the situation in order to get this exact reaction to frame himself as the victim, while also...
Okay, I gotta stop. I gotta stop and just say real quick how fucking lovely that dress is on Jessie Gender. Like, that is such a lovely orange dress. I love it so much.
So ignoring the violence that Matt will condone later on in the film in a much more insidious way, which we'll talk about later on. Yet all of this plays off of the other side of Matt's doublethink that he is placing in his audience, that he's just asking questions. So if he's just asking questions, these interviewees' hostility is
So, Artemis Manad says, can you possibly stop painting cis people and cis women with a broad, bigotish brush? You look just as bad as conservatives when you do that. Do we? Do we really? I'm not the first person who threw the stone. I'm not the first person as a trans person who started this. And not just me, beyond that. Trans people are not the ones that started this bigotry shit. So it's a little interesting when you say, can't you just stop it? Like, why are you doing this? When it's like, we're not the ones that are doing this. We're not the ones that are creating the hostile environment where cis people are against trans people. We're not the ones doing that. Cis people are. So I think the most appropriate thing to do right now is to reframe that question and be like, can cis people possibly stop painting trans people as fucked up? Why is that question not being asked? Why? I see what you're saying and I see where you're going, but it's like, we're not the first one that casted the first stone. And also, I'd like to point out that it never, in any of my rhetoric or narrative or anything here on Mindful Monad, have I ever meant to paint all cis people across the board as villains. It's just interesting to me that the only people, like, not just only people, cis people and binary trans people are really coming out of the cave as, like, bigots and just totally exclusionary and all that shit. So I see what you're saying, but I don't get it because I don't think you're understanding the perspective we're trying to convey here. I don't think you get it. I don't think you truly understand what's going on here. Anyways.
Unreasonable and rude, actively hostile and violent, making Matt look like he's on the high horse. And as a result, we can see how all of this balancing act with his audience's framing works in Matt's favor to frame him as the documentary's hero. So, this is where we're going to wrap out this video. But next time, we'll be diving into more of the actual points and narrative that What Is a Woman is trying to portray, and how Matt Walsh builds his case against the trans agenda, or as I like to call it, the transgender. Gotta make sure to bring that up at our next Queer Illuminati meeting. Transgender, right?
Our next Illuminati meeting, the transgender.
Write it down. But to wrap up here, I just wish to say,
Oh, you can buy me a shadow beer. I could have another shadow beer. That's fine. It's Friday. Ooh. Sorry. I'm sorry.
All of this shows me why I don't really understand the appeal of Matt Walsh. Like, I'm not trying to be like, fuck Matt Walsh here. I mean, fuck Matt Walsh, but I just don't get why people like this guy. With folks like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, I know they peddle the same ideology and presumption of superior knowledge that Walsh brings, but I also understand, to some level, the surface-level appeal of both of them. Ben Shapiro speaks so fast, it's almost hypnotic. He draws you in and spins the wheel of culture war discourse so fast that you never are really given a chance to stop and examine the bullshit, and it's honestly...
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna be back in just 2 seconds. Talks amongst yourselves. And I'm going to address some comments when I get back. Okay, we got, let's see. Oh, good night, Zero. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Susan says we absolutely will evolve past this stage, and that's great that you have an idea. Looking forward to hearing about it, Paul. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Meh. Anyways, continuing, we're almost done.
Kind of enthralling. Like, I dislike the man, but heaven help me if listening to him is honestly not kind of intriguing.
We will absolutely be getting into Ben Shapiro here,
And
and Lord help us. We're in it, honeys. We are in deep when we get into Ben Shapiro. Ben Shabibo.
Pure, I don't know how he speaks that quickly kind of way.
Just decided that they were going to lower standards with regard to testing because they wanted to alleviate disparities in outcomes. That is an outgrowth of critical race theory.
He's like me talking about an episode of Star Trek. Jordan Peterson, though, when we'll talk about him a little bit more later, is the opposite, wrapping up his nonsense in academic rigmarole that lends it an air of legitimacy that you need to stop to think about in order to unpack before you can see the nonsense.
Your responsibility is to incarnate the spirit of the Logos. That's your responsibility. That's your role in.
Jordan Peterson is really interesting and not as smart as he claims to speak. But I mean, that statement in itself isn't necessarily wrong. It's just Jordan Peterson.
Life. And that is independent to some degree in whether or not you accept the idea of a transcendent and eternal reality. Now, I'm not making a case for that or against that.
Okay.
As he himself states, he's the poor person, smart person. Or more accurately,
he is. Honestly, he is. Like, both Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson are a stupid man's idea of a smart man.
Person's idea of a smart person. And by the way, FD Signifier and PhilosophyTube did great videos on Jordan Peterson's ideology. But he also wraps it up in a...
Oh my lord. I really want to get into PhilosophyTube. I swear to God, like, she's brilliant, and we really need to, like, dive into some of that shit.
Veneer of masculinity, this manosphere energy that appeals to young men who are disassociated from society and are looking for a reason and framework to place their anxiety into about the world. Matt Walsh just takes away the veneer of all of that and lays it bare. Like, does he think he looks good coming out of the interaction with the wonderful Professor Patrick? Because to me, he looks like a complete and utter asshole. But that's what conservatives have ultimately become, isn't it? Aesthetic without meaning. A meme of themselves, meant to be passed around without thought, without actual engagement, but instead turn off the brain and turn into the texture of what feels right without actually engaging with what's actually being said. It's why Jordan Peterson can now truly sound like he's the villain from Control and have zero self-awareness of the comedic way he comes off.
Up yours, woke moralists.
I can't tell you how much I have just repeated that fucking shit on loop with Jordan Peterson going, up yours, woke moralists. I can't tell you how much Jordan Peterson literally sounds like a certain group of people that are against Hyperianism today. Up yours, woke moralist. Hyperianism is over. Like, shut up, you little bitch.
We'll see who cancels who.
And the people...
We'll see who cancels who. Exactly, bitch. You're going down. You going down, David Sinclair? Anyways.
Who watch him don't really engage enough critically to see how truly funny and hysterical he actually is. The same with Matt Walsh. The only way that Matt Walsh works is not to convince anybody, but to reinforce beliefs that somebody already has. To reinforce their lack of empathy, their uncaring nature, and their lack of curiosity that someone already has to feel in order to enjoy him. A lack of compassion for others and a lack of desire to learn. Honestly, it would be freaking hysterical if it wasn't about something so horrifying. This kind of movie is something a freshman film student would make, something to be laughed at, and something that I only look at with earnest pity because it showcases someone's best attempt, and you know that they ultimately fail to understand what makes the endeavor of our human existence meaningful by trying to engage in a truly encompassing way with the world around you. What is a Woman is not a film made to convince you or anybody. It's a film meant to sermonize to the already converted. The people who have already been primed to see the simple existence of a trans person as worthy of laughter, contempt, scorn, and even violence.
Some people in this world, and I do even speak of those that I just referenced, are just sermoning their followers. They're just sermoning their followers. They're just saying what their followers like. That's it. There's no reason to that. You don't have to exercise reason to appeal to a certain group of people. That's what's so dangerous about this world. That's what's so dangerous about certain ideologies. I, as Mindful Monad, as Jan Erickson, could easily just start spouting off fucking right-wing rhetoric, just spouting off like turf shit, and I would be so popular. I would be fucking banking in money, yo. It's so much more like profitable to spout like angry right-wing like bullshit than it is to do what it is I'm doing, which is speak the actual reasonable truth. Reasonable truth, objective reasoning just does not sell, unfortunately. That's why I ask you to subscribe to my Patreon. If you could subscribe to my Patreon, that'd be great. I would really appreciate that.
Set up his interviewees under false pretenses to make the interviewees look dumb, stupid, or, most importantly, hostile. For example, look at Matt's interview with the first gay congressman, Mark Takano. Mark initially sits down with Matt in good faith, but Matt asks a question that subtly reveals his of Matt as reasonably asking questions flies in the face of his harassment and attempts to escalate the situation in order to get this exact reaction to frame himself as the victim, while also ignoring the violence that Matt will condone later on in the film in a much more insidious way, which we'll talk about later on. Yet all of this plays off of the other side of Matt's doublethink that he is placing in his audience, that he's just asking questions. So if he's just asking questions,
So, infighting, if you didn't catch my last episode of Mindful Monad on Wednesday, you'll see me talking specifically about infighting and how useless it is to attack other people who are fighting for the same thing as you do, simply because they're doing it in such a way that you don't think is right enough or pure enough or correct enough or literal enough. Check that out, because there's a big difference between fighting for unity between yourselves as individuals and straight up attacking other individuals just because you don't like what they're doing.
Interviewee's hostility is unreasonable and rude, actively hostile and violent, making Matt look like he's on the high horse. And as a result, we can see how all of this balancing act with his audience's framing works in Matt's favor to frame him as the documentary's hero. So, this is where we're going to wrap out this video. But next time, we'll be diving into more of the actual points and narrative that What is a Woman is trying to portray. And
we are going to be viewing part 2 at some point. Jesse Gender is still working on part 2 of this Matt Walsh hysteria. I'm so excited! And we're going to watch it as soon as Jesse Gender puts it out. God damn, she's amazing.
How Matt Walsh builds his case against the trans agenda, or as I like to call it, the transgender. Ooh, gotta make sure to bring that up at our next Queer Illuminati meeting. Transgender, write it down. But to wrap up here, I just wish to say, all of this shows me why I don't really understand the appeal of Matt Walsh. Like, I'm not trying to be like, fuck Matt Walsh here. I mean, fuck Matt Walsh, but I just don't get why people like this guy. With folks like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. I really appreciate that. So wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and participating and helping me out. It really does help.
Hero, I know they peddle the same ideology and presumption of superior knowledge that Walsh brings, but I also understand, to some level, the surface-level appeal of both of them. Ben Shapiro speaks so fast it's almost hypnotic. He draws you in and spins the wheel of culture war discourse so fast that you never are really given a chance to stop and examine the bullshit, and it's honestly kind of enthralling. Like, I dislike the man, but heaven help me if listening to him is honestly not kind of intriguing, just on pure, I don't know how he speaks that quickly kind of way.
Just decided that they were going.
Paul Cherry says they have admitted that online illuminism is dead, and the only way they can survive and stay relevant is to beef with Hyperianism. Look, you all, this drama has been going on for over a month. Supposedly, Hyperianism has meant to be ended, and it's not. I'm Hyperion. This is a Hyperion channel. This is Hyperianism. I'm here to stay. I'm just fine. Like, it's so funny! Like, it's getting laughable at this point, y'all. Don't you see what's going on? Don't you see what's going on? Like, we're fine. We are fine, honeys. Like, who's in reality and who's not? Like, we're continuing with our thing, and they're just like, oh, jeez, folding their arms, like, we're just so mad at Hyperianism. Like, they're just so, like, like, don't you see how silly this is? Like, come on, we're fine.
To lower standards with regard to testing because they wanted to alleviate disparities in outcomes. That is an outgrowth of critical race theory.
He's like me talking about an episode of Star Trek. Jordan Peterson, though, when we'll talk about him a little bit more later, is the opposite, wrapping up his nonsense in academic rigmarole that lends it an air of legitimacy that you need to stop to think about in order to unpack before you can see the nonsense.
Your responsibility is to incarnate the spirit of the Logos. That's your responsibility. That's your role in life. And that is independent to some degree in whether or not you accept the idea of a transcendent and eternal reality. Now, I'm not making a case for that or against that.
No, see, like, leftists, like, any movement that's for, it's not about leftism. Any movement that's for taking down the rich elite and the powers that be, the first thing they're going to do is attack other movements before they attacked the systems that they say they're against, because they feel powerless, because they're unwilling to work on their shadow, because they're unwilling to accept that as individuals, they have individual issues and problems and shit. They don't know how to deal with that on an individual level and then comprehend coming together on a collective level. Hyperianism does. We know how to come together as individuals into a collective because that's what our business is. Not those guys. They don't give a shit. They just want you to do what they say. Fucking mysterious overlords. I don't give a shit.
As he himself states, he is the poor person's smart person. Or, more accurately, the poor person's idea of a smart person. And by the way, FD Signifier and PhilosophyTube did great videos on Jordan Peterson's ideology. But he also wraps it up in a veneer of masculinity, this manosphere energy that appeals to young men who are disassociated from society and are looking for a reason and framework to place their anxiety into about the world. Matt Walsh just takes away the veneer of all of that and lays it bare. Like, does he think he looks good coming out of the interaction with the wonderful Professor Patrick? Because to me, he looks like a complete and utter asshole. But that's what conservatives have ultimately become, isn't it? Aesthetic without meaning. A meme of themselves, meant to be passed around without thought, without actual engagement, but instead turn off the brain and turn into the texture of what feels right without actually engaging with what's actually being said. It's why Jordan Peterson can now truly sound like he's the villain from Control and have zero self-awareness of the comedic way he comes off.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
And the people who watch him don't really engage enough critically to see how truly funny and hysterical he actually is. The same with Matt Walsh. The only
Up yours, woke moralist. We'll see who cancels who.
way that Matt Walsh works is not to convince anybody, but to reinforce beliefs that somebody already has, to reinforce their lack of empathy, their uncaring nature, and their lack of curiosity that someone already has to feel in order to enjoy him, a lack of compassion for others, and a lack of desire to learn. Honestly, it would be freaking hysterical if it wasn't about something so horrifying. This kind of movie is something a freshman film student would make, something to be laughed at, and something that I only look at with earnest pity because it showcases someone's best attempt, and you know that they ultimately fail to understand what makes the endeavor of our human existence meaningful, by trying to engage in a truly encompassing way with the world around you. What is a Woman is not a film made to convince you or anybody. It's a film meant to sermonize to the already converted. The people who have already been primed to see the simple existence of a trans person as worthy of laughter, contempt, scorn, and even violence, rather than with curiosity or empathy. And hand these people...
That hits really hard. I wish as a non-binary person, people would ask me questions about me and my non-binariness from a place of curiosity and empathy rather than like scrutiny or like I have to prove to them what I am. I wish people would ask questions about me and my gender like from a place of just like innocent inquisitiveness, just like, hey, what's it like? Like, what is this? What is that? But instead, like, when people ask me questions about me being non-binary and trans, sometimes I feel like it's more from a place of, like, well, just convince me that this is real. Like, convince me that this is the thing. Whereas, like, I really wish people would ask me questions from a place of just, like, innocent, sort of, like, hey, like, can I just ask you what it's like? Like, what's it like? Like, what is this? What is that? Like, what's it like for you? I don't get that a lot. I just get, like, the scrutiny, the eyes gazing down, like, well, like, explain to me, peasant, non-binary peasant, how possibly you can exist. It's like, I don't want to have to do that. Like, why do I have to do that?
Form of lazy, memeable arguments and wish to enact their worldview onto the world and harm transgender people, all while building up the power of those who are stoking it. Something that we'll talk about more next video. Because you see, Matt Walsh's answer to what is a woman is this. See, this is where the vagina would be on a real person. Actually,
no! Stop it! Stop it!
He'd point to the womb, which is like more here-ish on a person. So technically, it's just, you know what? It's a strong visual, all right? It's a
No! Stop it! Stop it!
It's a mannequin. I spent a lot of money on this mannequin for a reason.
Mannequins! You have to buy a mannequin. Oh my god!
Now I see why conservatives hate science. Ruins the goddamn joke. Anyways, we'll see you next video to talk about vaginas. And Matt Walsh's misunderstanding of them. And don't forget, X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Did you just call me Blob? No,
Definitely a film that exists.
Just the mannequin fucking, the mannequin chooch. What the fuck? Straight up mannequin, like, cha-cha. Mannequin cha-cha. Ole, ole.
And it's better than What is a Woman, that's for damn sure.
Just her, like, next to the mannequin chooch is so funny. It's so fucking funny. It's so fucking funny. I love it.
Anybody? Chad, see ya.
Sponsored by
No, go back. No, go back. No, go back. So, I don't know how familiar with Star Trek everybody is, but there's a certain character called Jadzia Dax in Deep Space Nine, and she, or they, or he, is something that I really relate to. Jadzia Dax is a specific alien entity that their species are symbiotic with another. So there's like a weird slug species and then a more humanoid species on the same planet. And only certain humanoid species from this planet can be allowed to sync up with such slug species. But the slug species live way longer than the humanoid ones. So they have to survive and thrive by occupying and being inside, like inserted into the humanoid species. But it's like a symbiotic relationship. It's like not all of the humanoid species are qualified to host the slug species, but if you are, then it's like a big deal. So, like, one of the characters in Deep Space Nine is called Jadzia Dax, and I love him because it's like she's, first and foremost within her immediate lifetime woman, but when you have the slug species that's inserted inside of you, you carry on and share the memories of all previous humanoid life before that the slug has inhabited. So, when the slug is inhabiting Jadzia Dax, she has the lifetime and memories of several lifetimes before her. And a lot of it she references like, oh, I was like a very, I was a tough guy, I was a tough commander, like I had a wife, like children, this, that, and the other. I've been like a husband, I've been a wife, I've been all this stuff. And it's sort of like this character in Star Trek that not only acknowledges her lifetime that she has at the moment, but several previous lifetimes before through the weird slug entity. So it's like, I like that concept as a Hyperion, as being a alien that is aware of several lifetimes that you had previously. And it's not something that overcomes you or overtakes you or that you're obsessed about. It's just like, oh yes, I had those lifetimes, I did this and that and the other, and I'm moving on. So I love that concept of being aware and conscious of several periods of lifetimes. Anyways.
Anybody? Jadzia! Jadzia, no! Jadzia's a Daily Wire subscriber now.
Oh no! No, Jadzia, no!
Hey everybody, new face. Who this? Yes, hello everybody. Here I am, new face, post-surgery. You've seen the videos and all the stuff. I've even got the stereotypical blue in my hair. I'm just basically the meme of a trans person at this point. But, jokes aside, if you want to figure out how I'm going to color my beard next, then you're going to have to check out my next video on What is Woman coming in a few weeks. Yes, I know, all of you want that video right now, but
I want it
sadly,
now.
the next video is
now. I want it now.
even bigger than this one was, and I decided that I want to really make sure I do it right, get all my research down, make sure I double check and triple check everything, and I've got a few extra special things going on in that video. Let's just say I get a wig, I get a beard, and I get a conspiracy board. It's gonna be a fun time.
Yay! Yay! I'm so looking forward to the next part. We are so going to do that.
Given all of that, and because I want to really make sure I do it right, it is going to take a little bit of time, so please be patient with that video. It will be coming at latest sometime next month. But don't worry, I actually have a couple other videos that I'll be doing in the meantime about my favorite TV show, The Boys. Or at least one of my favorite TV shows. You all know what my favorite TV show is. The Boys is up there, but come on. That being said, if you want all of those videos as soon as possible, as soon as they're done, then I am excited to tell you that there are 2 ways you can get my videos early. The first one is by helping me out over on Patreon, where you can get videos early, as I said, and get your name in videos, and it's also the predominant way that helps me pay the bills. But the other way to help me and get videos early is through the amazing streaming service Nebula. Nebula, as many of you know, is a Streamy Award-nominated, curated streaming platform that allows me and many of my fellow education-style YouTube creators like PhilosophyTube, Princess Weeks, FD Signifier, and others to have a place to make videos away from the algorithm worries here on YouTube. And I guarantee you, you will learn more on Nebula than perhaps other...
Maybe we will explore that.
Streaming services that we've been talking about in this video. And I tried to release as many videos as I can on there early, including the next video in this series and the ones I'm going to be doing on The Boys, as well as a few videos here and there that are exclusive to Nebula. And, even better, if you want to...
I actually been meaning to watch The Boys. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with the concept of The Boys. It's like a superhero series that's kind of like exposurely of right-winged ideals. I'm curious to see it. I'm not sure what it's about exactly, but I don't know.
Learn even more while getting 2 streaming services at once. One of the major ways that Nebula is itself supported is through its partnership with today's sponsor, the amazing Curiosity Stream, a subscription streaming...
Yeah, okay. And so... So I just want to say, the weird question where it's being asked, like, what is a woman? In the case of Matt Walsh asking this question, Matt Walsh is not asking this question in a good faith sort of way where he's genuinely trying to, like, narrow down a difficult topic. I feel like he's legitimately trying to further villainize trans people and non-binary trans people, and honestly, it sucks. It sucks in more ways than one, because, like I said, I don't want to have this war between cis people and non-cis people, binary people and non-binary people. I don't want to have that war. Why is it always the cis person who starts that war? Ask me that. Why? Why is it non-binary people, binary, trans people? Why are we the ones that constantly have to convince you of this, that, and the other? Why is it that we have to be the ones that explain shit? I feel like there's questions being asked in a sense where it's like, oh, I'm asking this in good faith, but I feel like people need to really examine and reframe and rework they're questioning and being like, why am I feeling so uncomfortable by trans people that I need an explanation for why they exist? Why do I need to be convinced that non-binary people are valid? That's the kind of question that needs to be asked. That's the kind of shadow work that needs to be done here. In Hyperianism, we constantly talk about shadow work, and frankly, I feel like this is a form of projection. It's a form of projection. Like, why should I have to define my gender? So instead of asking that question, it's more comfortable to say, why are you so fucked up? Do you see how projection works in that sense? And that's where it's just like, it's very frustrating. And I wish I could just exist, but I can't. So in some sense, I feel like I'm forced to speak out and be like, I'm a non-binary bitch. And then the people are like, why are you being so loud about that? And it's like, well, I kind of have to. I kind of have to at this point. Like, what do you mean? Like, I didn't start this shit. So, total projection. Sucks. Anyways. So, I would love to wrap up this evening. Thank you all so much for coming. Let us turn back on the music. And let's start thanking people for coming tonight. Thank you so much for coming. Morg, thank you so much for coming. And Mark, thank you so much for coming and being a moderator. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much, all moderators, for coming into the house and making things like very positive and productive. So, Cassie, Mark, I see Susan, and Light Remus, thank you so much for coming, Light Remus. Thank you, Rebecca, for coming. Mistress, sorry, I have allergies. Forgive me. So, like, Mistress Angelica, thank you for coming. Paul Cherry, thank you for coming. Susan, yes. VKG, thank you so much for coming. Athon, thank you so much. Lisa Grace. Heretical Response, thank you so much for your tip. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And Rebecca too. I really appreciate that. Perry, good to see you. Thank you so much for coming. Yes, good night, everybody. Good night. Good night, good night. I hope you all meet a new part of yourselves in your dreams tonight. always feel like dreaming is an opportunity to meet a new part of yourself. Not in a literal sense, but maybe in a more nuanced, like, subconscious sense. You meet a new part of yourself in your dreams. But I hope you meet a new part in your dreams in which helps you towards your inner star actualization. Good night, MC. Good night, Angelica. Good night, Ethan, Rebecca, Perry. All right. Good night, everybody. Good night, Laura. Good night.